Hello and welcome to Cooking the Books with Heather. Today we're going to be working again from Sam Jones's cookbook called Whole Hog BBQ, and we are going to be making sweet coleslaw. And when I tell you this is sweet, it's going to be sweet. I have never made a super sweet coleslaw before. It's very standard here in North Carolina. It's not unusual, but I was a little shocked by the amount of sugar in this recipe. I think I've said that for like 2 recipes in a row from this book. But anyway, so we are going to first make the dressing. So he says to make the dressing in a separate bowl and then chop up the cabbage and then put it on top. I'm just going to make the dressing, and then as I chop up the cabbage, because we're going to have to do it in batches, put it in here. So I've already got my cabbage weighed, because he says a head of cabbage, but my cabbage was pretty large, so he also gave a pound measurement, so I took a portion of my very large head of cabbage and cut them into basically sort of 1-inch chunks so that we don't overwork the food processor that we're going to use to chop it, which is a lot easier than doing this by hand, trust me. And so I want to make the dressing in here, and it's very simple. I've got a little bit of mayonnaise. I use Duke's. Very surprised how little of this dressing there is for that amount of cabbage, but we'll see how it works. I'm sure it will. Anyway, and then this is Miracle Whip. So it's salad dressing such as Miracle Whip. I mean, Miracle Whip's the only one I know, so that's what we're using here. So we've got both in this recipe, which is interesting. And now we have, like I said, quite a lot of granulated sugar. It was a lot. And the only other thing we need to add is some yellow mustard. Just a little bit of that. So I'd already used my plungy thing, so I'm just doing it this way. Great. So, and I've also used my whisk, which I may need to wash and use again, but I'm going to try just mixing it up with this spoon. Once you add the sugar, that really bulks up that dressing, doesn't it? Which kind of makes sense. I mean, sugar is generally treated as a wet ingredient in baking. All right. Shockingly, there's no salt in this recipe. It's just sugar. And of course, whatever little bits of salt are in the Miracle Whip, mayonnaise, and mustard. So I'm going to call that good, and we're going to get out the food processor. Okay, so we're supposed to fill this to the halfway point, no more. So I think that's about it. Pulse 6 times, then run it for 30 to 60 seconds until it's finely chopped. We are not going for like a very fine minced paste, but pretty finely chopped. So all right, that was way less than 30 seconds, but I think that is fine because we're getting really close to a mince. And then we're just gonna probably get another spatula to help me get this out of here so I don't kill myself with that blade. So I've got one that's already got some nicks and scratches on it, so I don't have to worry too much about scratching it up again. There we go. And I'm just going to keep doing that until we get through this whole bowl of cabbage, and maybe even go a little bit less time than that, because that looks really small to me. Close to what he has, very close, so not too much less. All right, now we're just mixing that into the very sweet dressing. That's it. I think that's a decent amount of dressing. It will probably start leaching a little bit of fluid, gets a little bit wet. You can see that in the picture where there's a little bit of like wateriness in the bottom. And he says this is best day of, because it loses its crispness overnight. We are going to be serving it tomorrow, but I might give it a taste tonight to see what we think and what the difference is, if it's a big difference, just because I didn't want to have to do this tomorrow. So there we go. We will let you know what we think in just a minute. On this episode of Cooking the Books with Heather, you watched me make Sweet Coleslaw from Sam Jones's cookbook, Whole Hog BBQ. So, I've never made this particular coleslaw before, and I was shocked, to say the least, at the amount of sugar in it. I knew that a lot of Southern cooks made a very sweet coleslaw, but I personally have never made that before. Sometimes I'll put a little sugar in mine, but not usually that much. There was more sugar in this than mayonnaise, plus Miracle Whip. So that's a lot. But it turns out pretty much exactly like the coleslaw you get at most barbecue places here. When you get a mayonnaise-based sweet coleslaw, there are several kinds of coleslaw that you can get in North Carolina, in the general vicinity. But sweet coleslaw, I think, is the most prevalent. And so it tasted just like, say, the coleslaw that we would get at, I think, Smithfield Chicken and Barbecue. Tasted just like that. Tastes just like the coleslaw that you would put on a barbecue sandwich, or you would get on a barbecue sandwich at almost any barbecue restaurant. So it was exactly what I expected. The only thing I have to say about it is, about the recipe itself, is that it did not take nearly 30 seconds in my food processor to get it to a very small size. If I had gone more than like about 10 seconds, I think it was. I talked about it when I was doing it, but it was getting close to paste in my food processor. So you certainly don't have to do it that long. I would use a food processor though. It would be really time consuming and need a lot of muscle to get it to this consistency without that. You can grate it using like a box grater, but that gets a little dangerous because cabbage is made up of a bunch of leaves and it tends to move around. So I do suggest using a food processor for this. But yeah, if you're looking for that kind of coleslaw, this is the perfect recipe for you. You should give it a try. And if you do, let me know in the comments down below what you think. And if you've enjoyed watching me make this, give me a thumbs up, hit the subscribe button, share this with your friends, and come back and watch me make something else next week.